Hello and welcome to the Sideboard here at the Modern Open in Louisville, part of the SCG Tour. I am Nick Miller alongside number 2 on our leaderboard, Andrew Tenjum. How you doing, sir?
Good.
Always good to see you. You've been tearing up the online, Magic world with this new take of Eldrazi. It's come to light this week. Everyone's been writing articles saying, I think Tenjum finally broke how to win the mirror and how to build the Eldrazi deck the best. And you have chosen blue-white.
That's what they've been saying, yep.
Now, you took the deck through a top 4 in the online PTQ, just kind of crushed the Swiss and then lost in the top 4. But you've got all the usuals here. We saw all this at the Pro Tour. We saw the Mimic, we saw the Endless One, Sky Spawner, Thought-Knot Seer, Reality Smasher. And then you've kind of done the amalgamation that a lot of people have done to start. They put the Drowner of Hope in the package as well that we saw, from Frank Lepore and people and the other people playing the blue-red builds. But Eldrazi Displacer just cracks everything wide open from everyone I've talked to about this deck.
Absolutely.
How good is that card, and just how warping is it in this, metagame right now?
Displacer, it just does everything, especially in the mirror match. The best interaction, of course, is Displacer with Drowner of Hope. Just blinking your Drowner and making 2 Scions every turn, or even more than 2 Scions, sometimes you make 4 or 6 every turn, is pretty game-breaking. And a lot of times the mirror comes down to a board stall where both players just have a bunch of creatures in play. And having Displacer and Drowner gives you inevitability because you're just going to be able to keep blinking it and keep on making Scions, and eventually you'll be able to tap down your opponent's entire board and attack for lethal. And the other important thing in the mirror with Displacer is that you can target your opponent's Endless Ones with it, which just removes it. It comes back with 0 counters and it dies. So yeah, Displacer is just very good in the mirror.
All right, so on top of the Drowner activations, you get to kill Endless Ones, you get to bring back Sky Spawner if that's something you need to do just to get more value as you keep going. You can
also blink Thought-Knot Seer during their draw step to essentially take away their draw steps.
Okay, so an instant speed way to just rip their card away. And of course, we've got Dismember, but white also adds Path to Exile, the most efficient removal in the format. Seems like a natural inclusion.
Yeah, in the mirror match, getting on board and getting ahead on board specifically is very important. So having 7 1-mana removal spells as opposed to the 3 or 4 that the other versions are playing, I think is a pretty big advantage.
Okay. So what's the game plan in the mirror matches outside of hope you get to a board stall, then let the Displacer take over? Is there other interactions? Because we've seen all kinds of brews of Eldrazi at this point. What is the key outside of just Drowner?
Well,
or is there
the mirror match is interesting because most of your cards are really the same as what they're doing, but I just think that we have the advantage because we can play our creatures and then we can kill our opponent's creatures with 1-mana removal spells because we have more of them. And that will eventually lead us to being ahead on board, and that's the key to the Eldrazi mirror, is just having more creatures than your opponent in play.
So we've got the mana base we have all seen now. We've got Eye of Ugin, Eldrazi Temple, Cavern, but now you have only 1 Urborg, to kind of get the value, but also a Darker Waste, just giving you your blue and white mana, but also colorless. Any other shifts to the mana base? I noticed you don't have like the Gemstone Cavern or any of that kind of stuff.
No, a reason we have a lot of actual blue and white mana deck, and that's not only because we have the Eldrazi creatures that are blue and white, but also because we have a lot of white spells, such as Path to Exile, and then some sideboard cards that we'll talk about in a bit.
Right. One of the big reasons you want the white splash on top of Displacer, as you mentioned, is the sideboard card, so we'll move to that. You've got a bunch of good ones. Rest in Peace, Stony Silence, kind of cards we've seen in modern sideboards for a while. But then you've got the other 2 we want to talk about. Disenchant, getting some play, and then Worship, which kind of go hand in hand when you break it down for us.
Yeah, Worship is just an excellent card in any Eldrazi mirror because once you have it in play, you really can't lose the game because you have so many creatures. You make a lot of tokens with Eldrazi Sky Spawner and Drowner of Hope that they're never going to kill all your creatures, and you can just never lose the game. And we also have Disenchant to kill opposing Worships because, like I said, in the mirror, Worship is pretty unbeatable, so we're not going to be able to beat opposing Worships either. And then it also kills stuff like Ensnaring Bridge out of like Lantern decks or any deck that wants to play Ensnaring Bridge. So that's a pretty important part of the deck because it allows us to beat cards that we normally wouldn't be able to beat without the white splash.
Right, I've seen a bunch of Team Lotus players, talk talking to their opponents after the round, you know, I brought in Disenchants, do you have Worship? Because like they're just bringing them in because they assume everyone has Worship or Ensnaring Bridge or some sort of hate card.
Yeah, it's just a really nice safety valve. You know it's there. You know you have outs to your deck to these unbeatable permanents.
Other sideboard options, we get blue, you got Stubborn Denial as your counterspell of choice, just the widest range of hits for 1 mana.
Yeah, there's a lot of different combo decks in Modern, and Stubborn Denial it just stops pretty much all of them. So it's just a nice versatile counterspell. And Ferocious is turned on quite a bit in this deck because we have Thought-Knot Seer, Rally Smasher, and Drowner of Hope.
Sure. Always going to be able to get that going when you need it to matter.
Exactly, yeah.
Of course, Gutshot, we've seen this card just jump up everywhere. Everyone's playing multiple copies. Got to deal with, you know, infect creatures, affinity creatures, but also Eldrazi moves, you got to deal with the Mimic too.
Yep, again, I'm talking about how it's important to get ahead on board, and doing it for 0 mana is the best way because you can take your normal turn and kill the creature when you draw a Gutshot.
Okay, so you've been working on this deck with Team Lotus for a while, and I assume you've tried many different takes of Eldrazi.
Yep.
What color combinations have you kind of tried out, and then any cool cards that you wanted to try to fit into the deck that didn't quite make the cut?
We tried all kinds of Eldrazi decks. We, of course, there was the blue-red and the colorless versions of the Pro Tour that we tried out first. But from there, we branched out to the green-red list that's been popular lately, blue-green. We've even gone as far as playing all 5 colors with some, but this version has definitely performed the best. An interesting card that I had previously in the list was Wall of Omens, actually. It blocks and works well with the Eldrazi Displacer, but unfortunately it doesn't block as well as we want it to, because in the Eldrazi mirror, the creatures that matter are the Thought-Knot Seers and Rally Smashers, which Wall of Omens doesn't block very well.
2 creatures that just beat through the wall.
Exactly.
But you do get a bunch of sweet value with Displacer if that's the route you want to go.
Yeah, if the metagame was different and there's less Eldrazi decks and more decks like Burn and Infect and like Zoo, then Wall of Omens could be very good. But there's just too much Eldrazi in the metagame right now to not prepare your main deck to beat the mirror match.
So the question on everyone's mind at this point is Eldrazi too good? After your run through the PTQ and, you know, most of the team playing this deck, what do you think is the answer to that question?
I absolutely think that Eldrazi is too good, and I think it leads to very not fun and uninteresting games because one player usually just gets ahead on board and just dominates their opponent. I do think that the next ban list needs to include either Eldrazi Temple or Ivugan, and that's my stance on that.
In your testing, is there a deck that routinely beats Eldrazi, or are you finding the same results that a lot of people are saying, you know, the decks that are tuned to beat it are still losing a good amount?
I have found for the most part that the decks that are tuned to beat Eldrazi, these so-called anti-Eldrazi decks, actually are just unfavored against Eldrazi. However, the one exception I found is Lantern, actually. I think Lantern is very favored against pretty much all of the Eldrazi variants. The version with 4 World Breakers is a little better, but I think Lantern is still favored. But Lantern has, A, not a lot of people are playing it, and B, it takes a lot of experience, and C, it still has some bad matchups that some people are still playing, like Jund and Burn.
Okay. All right, well, you're going to be coming off 2 buys. Most of the teams on this deck, it looks really good. You're on a run, so wish you the best of luck here in Louisville.
Thanks,
Stay
Nick.
tuned to StarCityGames.com all weekend long for the action here in Louisville.